Hey everybody, I am so excited. Today I get to talk to one of my favorite people, or soon to be favorite people, but favorite authors, Will Mancini. And I am just so excited and honored that you took the time out of your busy schedule to just talk to the people that I work with and the people that I write with and the people that need this information. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. It's great to be on with you today.
So, for those who aren't familiar with your work, kind of give us a brief bio of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, well, I was felt called into ministry during my college days, and part of my story is I have an engineering background. So went to seminary out after getting an engineering degree, and was involved in really two churches before jumping into the consulting role. I was in Dallas, Texas, at a church that was experiencing long-term decline, and there's all the challenges of that, and trying to create energy and turn that organization around, if you will. And many pastors understand those dynamics. And then I went and was a part of joined the staff of a recent church plant. It was planted in 1993 in Houston. So I joined there in 97 and had the exact opposite experience, was in a fast-growing church dynamic. So I had kind of the bookends of decline and growth as a pastor. And then in 2001, felt the Lord's prompting over several years. We had brought in consultants several times, and some good experiences, some bad, and just felt that nudge over several years to experiment with and practice and shadow folks who were doing consulting. And before too long, it took a couple of years, and the Lord, I felt, validated that role and that new way to serve. So I've been doing that for about 15 years now, full time.
That's great. So you've written several books. So kind of walk us through what came first and then where you are now.
Yeah, I've um, I've I've written, I think it's five, and share why it's a little unusual. I've done some co-author stuff and some different projects, but I started consulting in 2001, and at the time, one of my seminary professors had asked me to. His name's Aubrey Malphurs. He had asked me to co-author with him a book he was doing on leadership development in the church, and that was one of my roles at Clear Creek in the Houston area, Clear Creek Community Church. So that in 2004, I published Building Leaders with Aubrey Malphurs and Baker, and the whole goal, the problem we were trying to solve there is, how do you develop leaders at every level in your church and raise that value of leadership development? And so that was a project initiated by Aubrey, and I was delighted to help. Several years later, as churches were responding to my primary calling in the work of helping churches with a new form of strategic planning, or a kind of an accessible vision process, bringing vision to life, where I was getting requests for a process overview, basically in a book form, because it was a little different than what folks had been exposed to before. And so that gave rise to Church Unique, which is what most people know me from. That book was published in 2008 with Josie Bass as a leadership network book. And so that's it's used in seminaries, it's used with, church planting, and it's used in different, a lot of different faith tribes and different sizes of church. So the methodology there really can plug and play and work in really any size church. And so that was kind of an important one for me. After that, there's been a couple of smaller self-published books. One I wrote called Innovating Discipleship. Another one I co-authored called 20-Somethings Church. We had a friend of mine who, as a 22-year-old, she visited about 35 churches in North America that were doing a great job of reaching 20-somethings. So those are both short reads in what we call our Church Unique Intentional Leader series. There's about 5 books in that. And then, Micah, the most important book, I believe, to date, and kind of works with Church Unique, is a book that was released 30 days ago, literally January 1st of 2016, which is called God Dreams. The subtitle there is 12 Templates for Finding and Focusing Your Church's Future. So Church Unique is primarily about your identity, knowing your strengths as a congregation, and being able to articulate your own, your own disciple making mission and model. And then God Dreams is really about, hey, what does the long term trajectory look like? Sort of redeeming the idea of long range planning, and then developing a visionary planning model to have, I'll back it all the way up to kind of a 90-day, execution priority. So it's a fusion of long range thinking and short term execution, created just for church leaders. Again, my passion is to create how-to steps and tools that you can have in the conversation with your leadership team as a church. And I'm just trying to design tools that can really fit into, again, church planting, small core teams, or giga churches running 10,000 plus, wherever it is, that those models will still work. The tools will still work.
So
that's a long answer. So building leaders, Church Unique, innovating discipleship, and God Dreams are the four primary ones. The 20-somethings church and innovating discipleship, those are smaller self-published things. You can read them in an hour. So, and you can get those on Amazon like anything else.
So vision and clarity of vision is a huge theme to your work and how you develop leaders, because if you don't know where you're going, then you don't know how to support and equip and develop those leaders. So how would you advise any size church getting started on that process of vision clarity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually start at a little bit of maybe a counterintuitive place. So before we rush into the vision process itself, what I spend a lot of time at the front end doing with any church team is I want to expand their imagination and thinking on how important vision really is. And the primary way I do that, Mike, is I set up really a question and then a construct or a tool to think about. And the question is this: why do people call your church home? So let's just, First Christian in so-and-so Oklahoma. Why does someone, if we were to take a handful of people who've been at your church for years, that came and enjoyed, worship on Sunday, they've been a part of classes and groups, and let's just say they came in on a Monday morning to the church office. And what I love imagining for a minute, Micah, is we have a soul X-ray, and we bring in, Brother Bobby, Sister Sue. We bring in just folks who, they love the church. They've been a part of things for a while. And you sat them down and you said, hey, Bob, Sue, why do you call First Christian home? If we had a soul X-ray, what would we see if you could look into their heart? And here's the way I like to say it. You could see what really they are connected to emotionally. What connects them emotionally to the church? And why are they really there? And I would suggest, Micah, that there are four common answers in the church in North America, at least. And they're four P words. So we would say the place is what they're most connected to, the personality of the pastor or a staff person, a program in the church, or people, that is the friends, the first name basis with some familiar friends who kind of know them and accept them. And I remind churches, for most churches, you can get the last one, the first name kind of acceptance, you can get that in a local bar faster than you can in most local churches. So I'm just talking about that human need just to be known and accepted. So these four P words, place, personality, programs, and people. I like creating tension with these because I think they're good things. They're provisions for the church, and I want every pastor listening to have great buildings, great sanctuary, whatever, great staff, whatever, great programs. We like that. We know those are important, but what we want to do is reframe those as what I call lower room identities. In other words, people are going to come to your church, have opinions about those, and they're going to get connected to those. That's great. But in the end, they're not the most important place to get excited and to get connected, and they're not the most important reasons to call a church home. So we want to consider, I usually draw a napkin sketch of just a box of ground floor of a house and make it a 2-story house, and we we call the second story the upper room. And we suggest that most followers of Jesus, most churchgoers active in their faith, actually want to have an upper room identity. And as I take time to explain this, it becomes such a powerful idea. Actually, people want to be connected to the higher ideals, to a sense of calling and purpose, and even the vision of the church. The primary tool we use, the master tool for helping churches get clarity and have a clear sense of identity and direction, is called the vision frame. It's a simple little box that you can draw on a napkin or whiteboard. And we put that in the upper room and say there are at least 5 things in the upper room that a church leader ought to have clarified, a pastor, a minister ought to have clarified, so that you can begin to walk people to this upper room identity. And Micah, when you see this or have this conversation, I've never been, for 15 years, I've never been with lay leaders or church members who don't immediately agree, and they say, you know what, I would love to know what God is doing through our church, what our mission is, what our values are. How do we make disciples? Where is God taking us this next year, these next 5 years? And all these things can and will transcend people clinging to the preferential components of loving a church building, loving their favorite program, loving their connection to a staff. And if you think about it, the lower room ideas, those are all things that have to change over time. And what I tell pastors, would you love to do the work of ministry knowing that, hey, if a staff person changes, if you have to relocate your building, if you have to stop a program, start another program, or if someone moves away, that those things are not the defining connection for people? Because pastors know those things change, we lose people, all the time. So that would be, and I could keep rambling and talking about that construct. It's so powerful. But what I want to say to pastors, it's worth the time to get vision right, to have a great sense of clarity and confidence about who we are, where we're going, because people really will operate out of that upper room, and it is a game changer. The last thing I'll say on this, Micah, most folks are trying to grow their church by reshuffling, lower room things. They're trying to polish up lower room things. We're trying to get the next cooler building, or put, paint on the church sign. Those are important things. We
Right.
want to have great staff. Want to have the best programs, but those alone, are not going to win the day and enable the church to really become what what's calling you become as a local church. If you don't have that, if you're not operating from that upper room and inviting leaders and disciples to, into that upper room mindset.
Yeah, well, and I can see how that imagery of upper room just adds depth to that vision frame. Because the vision frame is something that, as soon as I read it, I was like, this is really cool. I'm a metric kind of gal. Like, I like to see, how do you measure success? That's a real big question for me. And but when you put it in the context of, first level versus upper room, I'm excited to read about how that comes to light. So I'm excited to hear that depth.
One little thing I'll say is I talk about those 4 Ps in chapter 4 of Church Unique, but when I wrote Church Unique in 2007, I didn't have the upper room, lower room identity as a metaphor. And if I could rewrite anything in Church Unique, I would write that, because it's become one of our most powerful tools at Oxano. And what I would like to do for your listeners, Micah, really quickly, is talk about the importance just of a simple whiteboard drawing. So I just want to show how simple this really is. When we write the vision frame, I don't know if this is, can you see this? I want to make,
Yes.
We have 5 irreducible questions of clarity. We say, what is the church ultimately supposed to be doing? Why do we do what we do at our church? Every church has a unique culture. How do we accomplish the mission on the broadest level? And then when are we successful? Those are the 4 sides of the frame. We look through the frame to the future, and we ask the question, where is God taking us? And I'll hopefully you guys will be able to see this on the video. The mission, the what is mission. What are we ultimately supposed to be doing? The why, we use the word values. Again, many are familiar with those words. And we have fun ways and visuals that we would talk about these. The mission is a compass. Compass in your head as a leader. The values are a fire in your belly, fire in your heart. The strategy down here. Literally, when we work with a church, we want the leaders to be able to draw on a napkin a picture of how the church accomplishes the mission. And that brings great breakthrough clarity programmatically. So rather than having a random soup of different programmatic offerings, we're actually showing a disciple-making pathway. And then the bullseye image is when we're successful, we call that mission measures, or measures for short there. And we encourage churches to have a definition of what kind of disciple their church is designed to produce. So we're showing how we're fruitful at our mission in addition to just attendance and giving. And then the final thing up here is this is what we call the vision proper. Where is God taking us next? I just wanted your listeners to be able to see that this is all about a whiteboard, quick drawing, and churches can have, in 60 seconds, my role, my deepest calling is that any pastor can get up and say the answer to, hey, what are we here to do? Why do we do what we do? How do we do it? When are we successful? And where is God taking us?
Well, I will just tell you the impact on my own personal ministry of that has been incredible, because those are questions that I now ask almost every time we have that, but that would be a great idea. Okay, wait a minute. And so it's been an incredible impact on my ministry. So I'm excited to see this next step. But for those who haven't really dived into the depths of Church Unique and those kind of things, where and what is the kernel of knowledge that you wish you could impart on all ministry leaders? If they didn't take the time to read your book, though we want them to, what kernel of advice or knowledge would you impart on them?
Yeah. Well, I would say the same thing a couple of different ways. And I would start it with the idea that clarity isn't everything, but it changes everything. And so most pastors are doing the hard work of ministry. I mean, pastors are my heroes. The ministry work that you're doing day in and day out, and the listeners are. I mean, the men and women leaders in the church are my heroes. And it's hard. I mean, I would say ministry without clarity is insanity, right? So what happens is I believe there's a missing sense of freedom, confidence, and credibility that comes from clarity. And if I could just rattle out, clarity isn't everything, but it changes everything. Clarity makes our uniqueness, undeniable. It makes direction unquestionable. We say, that clarity makes our convictions more tangible. It makes enthusiasm more transferable. Clarity makes focus sustainable, makes synergy possible. There's so much fruit that comes. The easiest picture maybe I could use to describe this is most churches get poor results because they're really not playing on the same team. It's as if whether I'm having a committee meeting or a staff meeting or a church council or elders, deacons, whatever polity that your church has, when people come, you don't see it visibly, but actually people are wearing different team jerseys. And so when I say clarity, or I talk about having freedom and confidence and greater credibility and progress in your church, what I'm really talking about is going through a process where that this is who we are as a church. Here's where we're going. Here's where our priorities are. Here's where we're going to focus. In essence, what we're doing is everyone is coming in now wearing the same jersey. We're operating off the same playbook, and there begins to be an enthusiasm and an energy. There's been so much written on church growth. What if church growth was nothing more than a transfer of enthusiasm? We don't have the shared vocabulary. We don't have that crystal clear, white hot sense of what God is calling us to do in our city, in our corner of the world, in our lifetime. What if we had that? So everything we're doing is just an excuse to have margin, tools in the conversation, and it's not rocket science. It's just slowing down enough to be able to articulate who we are, where we're going.
So one of the things that I keep running into, and I'm going a little off our questions, but I have to ask, one of the things that I keep running into is the grief that comes with clarity. because once your community has clarity, there's some obvious things that are not in your vision frame or not in your purpose.
Yeah.
And so how do you both honor and grieve what was in an effort to go forward to what God is calling you to do?
Yeah, that is a great question. I'm gonna go back to that lower room, upper room identity for a minute and remind the listeners, this is a very powerful idea. People don't resist change, they resist loss. And we would illustrate that very quickly in a room by saying, hey, who would resist, a 10% increase in your pay next week? A change by itself, can be very easily to adapt if it's a positive thing that we gain. So what happens is when people don't want to change, they're resisting a loss of something, and what they're usually doing is there's a loss of their identity and an identity level because you're introducing a change in a program, for example, using your example. So the truth is, over time, people can be attached to a value that that they literally can not only now endure change, but that now the people will drive change. Just maybe a quick illustration.
Mm-hmm.
There's a First Presbyterian church in San Antonio, Texas, is right across the street from the Alamo. It's got a great historic ministry in the city there. One of the most visited places in the state of Texas down there. In the 50s, 60s, when many churches were leaving downtown to go to the growing suburbs, they decided to stay there. They had their own story of steadfastness right next to this cultural icon of steadfast kind of loyalty and holding out, if you will. And what they said over time when they went through this vision framing process is one of their values is city transformation. Is one of the things that's an ideal. They want to be committed to seeing change happen in the name, for the sake of the gospel in the city. Well, they had been a leader for years in homeless ministry in the city. Well, a new mayor came in. There was a new study done. There was new resources allocated, and the city was going to take over now and try to do some new things, innovative things, and work with homeless. And of course, the church was invited to the table. And when the pastor first shared the idea that the city wanted to do some bigger and better things than the church was doing, of course, there was immediate resistance, defensiveness. Hey, this is our ministry. This is our space. And, you can imagine how any of us would feel immediately. And all the pastor had to do was just have an upper room moment and say, hey, guys, hey, leaders, remember who we are at the core of for decades. What have we said is our ideal? We are committed to the transformation of the city in the name of the gospel more than we are to our brand of doing homeless ministry. Let's go to the table and participate for the sake of our city. And that pastor reported that just within 5 minutes, the whole disposition of their homeless ministry team shifted day and night, 180 degrees, just because we were able to speak back into that upper room, identity. It was just a core value. It's just one of 5 values. That's just one part of really, a content base here that you have a lot of things you can vision cast with and lead from.
That's great. I just really appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate you walking us through that, and I can't wait to read the next book. And so I know you're a busy guy. I'm flying all over, but for taking a minute from my little blog, I surely appreciate it. And I know
you're doing a great job. It's not little. You're doing a fabulous job, and I know that the content you're bringing is helping leaders, and will continue to do so. So thank you for the way you serve the Capital C Church, Micah.
I appreciate it. All right. Well, go get some rest and go on with your great mission and ministry, and hopefully we'll cross paths again soon.
Yep. Don't hesitate to let me know how I can help you, okay? Let's just schedule to do a God Dreams thing down the road. And
I would love that, and I bet the listeners would too. Yes. Yeah, the answer is yes. We'll schedule it.
Great.
All right.
Keep up the great work. Bye, Micah.
All right. Bye.